My lovely wife here in Thailand. She was actually my girlfriend at the time, and she's flying over, dude, from Bangkok to New York in 5 days. And I'm sitting in jail in Maryland, which is like 500 miles away from the airport in New York. And I'm like, I have no idea, like, how the hell I'm going to pick her up from the airport. And this was like the breaking point. This is like as low as I wanted to go. This was my rock bottom. Since you mentioned CBT, so CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is looking at the interplay between thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, right? And you're right. It's about changing, trying to change thoughts. Whereas mindfulness-based cognitive behavioral therapy is more about recognizing, accepting, and realizing that thoughts will come and thoughts will go, and we don't have to entertain them, we don't have to play with them, you know, where traditional cognitive behavioral therapy is like, no, that thought is a cognitive distortion, it's a thinking error.
All right, welcome everyone to episode number 12 of Talks with Rasmus. I have, I don't remember your name.
Chris Norris.
Chris Norris.
I have
Chris Norris here with me. Through my sort of running community here in Chiang Mai, I've gotten to know this wonderful person, and he has a very interesting story. So we want to get into that today. So welcome, Chris. Thank you for sort of accepting this conversation. Apologies for the lack of.
I've seen you've done a lot of prep work.
A lot of prep work.
That's awesome, man. And thanks for having me on. I'm always honored to be on podcast and to tell my story and see if it's useful for anyone's experience. Then we'll get into it. So
so we know each other from the sort of trail running community here. And then we talked a little bit about sort of mindfulness and meditation and different kind of stuff. And you told me a little bit about your journey, but I'm not. I don't know the full story. So
sure. Let me give you the condensed story, if you would. So I'm from New York originally. I'm from upstate New York. Albany is the capital of New York. I am the youngest of 9 kids. That's usually like. I'll just pause there for effect so people can digest that.
9 kids.
Yeah, I've got 5 sisters and I've got 3 brothers. I am the youngest, so they're all older than me. I have nieces and nephews that are married with kids and such. I was born in 1974, upstate New York. Pretty typical childhood, as typical as you could have, you know, being the youngest of 9 kids. So I ended up getting through high school. Didn't really have any plans for after high school. Was kind of like really mixed up with drugs and alcohol and just being a deviant. I was getting in a lot of trouble and such. And then I remember I was in my early 20s and I woke up in like this college like flop house, and I wasn't in college at the time, but I was just down there partying in Albany, New York. And I still to this day never figured out how my mother got this telephone number for this place, because back then there was no cell phones, there was no internet, there was none of that kind of stuff. And called me on a phone, and I remember there was a girl I barely knew was holding this phone, and she said, "Your mother's on the phone." I was like, "My mother's on the phone? Like, what the hell?" And on the other side of that phone, my mother told me that my nephew passed away. Now my nephew, I was born, big family, right? So I was born an uncle. So he was a year older than me. I grew up with him. And that, as tragic as that was, that is kind of like what set my journey in motion, where I like had this like existential crisis of like, life is short, I'm wasting mine, what the hell am I doing with myself? Like, what the fuck am I doing, right? It still took like another 2 years of me like bouncing off the bottom in Albany, New York, to finally make the decision to do something. So I joined the Navy. And when I joined the Navy, I remember thinking like, I've never given 100% to anything in my entire life. Like other than maybe like trying to get alcohol, chase girls, get cigarettes, get drugs, whatever. So I joined the Navy. I was about 6 months dry at the time. I hadn't had a drink, I hadn't had any drugs, nothing like that. I joined the Navy, and I decided to give it 100%. and things like went well. I was getting promoted right away. I ended up in boot camp, no big deal, made it through that. Ended up going to a technical school out in California, did well there. But at the end of that technical school, I remember thinking like, well, I got my shit together now, so like I could probably go have a drink, to celebrate. But I never ever drank like a normal person. So when I drank, like it was just like blackout, crazy drinking. And so I drank, and then I remember getting up the next day and people seeing me and be like, "Holy shit, man!" They're like, "Now we know like why you don't drink." They're like, "You shouldn't drink. Like you were an absolute mess last night. Like, do you remember anything you did?" And I was like, "It was bad."
This is the late 20s.
Yeah, this is I was 24 at the time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so this is 1998. I'm 24 years old in California. So I kind of laughed it off because like the Navy's was at the time, it was a place where you could work hard, you could play hard, and as long as you worked really hard and you got a nice uniform and you kept up appearances, like you could go out and just be a complete mess on your off time. Just don't get arrested, don't get in trouble, don't make it obvious. But if you show up on time at work, relatively sober, and work your ass off all day long, like you could really keep the heat off you. And it's like a place where you're only in certain areas and in certain jobs for a certain amount of time. So as long as I could just like keep my poop in a group, keep my shit together for a length of time, then I would just move on to the next assignment. And I also like, before I joined the Navy, I'm thinking to myself like, oh, the Navy's going to be this starchy, staunchy organization, and it's really going to be uptight. And then when I got in, I was like, found my people. Like this is where it was like the Island of Misfit Toys, man. This is like where all the misfits of society ended up, was like in the military. It was like it was just a cast of characters, man, and I was one of them. But yeah, so I continued to drink, and I drank for another decade, and I'll tell you what happened a little bit later on. But I did well. I was working hard. I was doing well. I was on. I went on 2 deployments. One to Puerto Rico, and then redeployed to Central America, where I got to do some things, and then came back to the States, then went to Okinawa, Japan, then came back, and then I started getting antsy and started getting restless, and I'm like, I knew I could do more. Like I wanted to do more in the Navy. So I screened and interviewed for Naval Special Warfare Development Group in 2000, and I got picked up by them. And when I made it up there and working with doing direct combat support with Navy SEALs, I was like in love. I was like, this is fucking awesome. So now, like, I worked really hard there, excelled there. They took me as a mechanic. At the time, I was a mechanic, and they taught me everything, not everything they knew, but they taught me a lot of what they knew, like all the weapon systems, comms, navigation, jumping out of the plane, shooting the guns, driving the boats, driving the trucks, having a great time, like getting paid to do some really, really fun shit. Yeah. And that was really fun. So I did some deployments with them, and then 2007, everything I built up all came crashing down because of my drinking again. Like again, I fucked it up. I blew 3 times the legal limit while driving a vehicle at 2:00 in the morning. The kicker is that the vehicle's license plate said for official use only on it. In other words, it was a government vehicle. And I'm bar hopping it.
Wow.
Yeah, it's fucking bad. It's really bad, right? And the girl you met earlier, my lovely wife here in Thailand, she was actually my girlfriend at the time, and she's flying over, dude, from Bangkok to New York in 5 days. And I'm sitting in jail in Maryland, which is like 500 miles away from the airport in New York. And I'm like, I have no idea, like, how the hell I'm going to pick her up from the airport. And this was like the breaking point. This is like as low as I wanted to go. This was my rock bottom. Because I remember sitting in jail, and I'm thinking to myself, like, I can't wait to get the hell out of here. Because when I get out of here, I'm going to go kill myself. Like, that was my plan. I was literally planning on jumping off a bridge. So I got released. I actually got back to the car that they left in this parking lot as they arrested me. I don't remember how I did that, but I got back to the car. I ended up driving the car, and I remember driving up over this bridge that goes from over the Tungsten River, Solomon Islands, to Air Base in Maryland, and thinking to myself, all right, I'm going to get to the top of this bridge. I'm gonna pull the car over. I'm gonna fucking get out. I'm gonna go over the rail and I'm gonna jump, and that'll be it. Lights out. I'm super grateful I didn't do that. I kept going over the bridge, and I remember I pulled off this dirt road. I ended up on the side of the river, and I had like this crazy heart-to-heart conversation with myself. As crazy as that sounds, but like this deep like conversation of like, dude, like what the fuck are you doing? And you're like, I pretty much was feeling like my life is over, my career is over, everything I built up is over. This girl that's coming from Thailand that I have like these high hopes for, I'm like, that's probably over too. She doesn't even know yet, but that's going to be over too soon. But I made a commitment. I was like, man, no matter what happens, I'm never ever going to drink again. Never drinking ever again. And that was over 16 years ago, and I've still held that promise. So I've never drank again.
Cool.
Yeah, it is cool. It's cool. It's good for me. Good for everybody. So anyhow, yeah, man, I ended up going to as they call it, captain's mass in the Navy. It's where you get in trouble and you have to go before your commander, and they punish you. So they took away my rank. So they dropped me from being a senior E6, getting ready to take a chief's exam, to a junior E5, like week 1, day 1. So like when I joined, it took me 3 years to make E5. Now here I was at 10 years in, and I'm right back to where I was at 3 years in. And now I'm also facing getting kicked out based on, they call higher tenure. You can only stay in so long and be a certain rank. So I wasn't a high rank, so I almost got kicked out just because of that like administrative thing. So anyway, I went to rehab in the Navy. I went through treatment, saved my life. I worked my ass off. I made my rank back. My then girlfriend, now wife, we got married. We got a couple dogs. I got a motorcycle. I went to tons of like AA. I was big in the AA back then. I used to go to AA meetings all the time. And so I recovered from that hopeless state I was in over the years. From there, let's see what the hell happened from there. So like I'm halfway through my military career story, but I ended up eventually, I stayed at Special Warfare, made my rank back, was able to stay in the Navy, but then at some point I got kind of like out of the operational mindset. I was kind of burned out and such, then I decided to go into like more of a helping mindset, more in the helping profession, of trying to help other people. So
still in the Navy, in the military.
Yeah, I was still in the military. I went back to being in construction battalions as a mechanic. That's where I originally started, was in the construction battalions, which is a really small section of the Navy. It's kind of unique. It's like, this is a part of the Navy that never goes on ships. So I was in the Navy for 24 years. I was on a ship once for 2 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was basically in barracks, on shore, dirt sailor. So I ended up going back there. And I had a main job of being an instructor at one point, and then I was a platoon chief in a construction battalion. But my heart was really in my collateral duties, which was I was drug and alcohol program advisor, and I was a sexual assault response coordinator, and I was more into helping people through challenging situations than my day job, honestly. I was more into my part-time job. So at 20 years in, I almost got out. I'm glad I didn't, because I almost got out, and I thought to myself, like, dude, you've been in the military for 20 years, and like, you still don't have a college degree. They'll pay for it, and I didn't do it. So my last like 4 years in the military was really about buckling down and getting my education. So I got an associate's degree, I got a bachelor's degree, and then I just finished my master's degree. I got 3 degrees back to back to back.
Cool.
Yeah, so.
And what are the degrees in?
So the first one is just like a general ed, kind of like to get the gears going, my associates. My bachelor's degree is in human services with concentration in substance use disorder treatment, treating people with addictions. And then my master's degree is in social work from Arizona State University. And I did my 2 internships with my master's program. Was one I did with a mental well-being texting app. Like people would text from all over the world. And when it came in, it would be me on a computer in Chiang Mai responding.
Great.
It was really cool.
Yeah.
So I got tons of business, especially from people like 3 o'clock in the morning that can't sleep in the States, and they're texting this app, and like little do they know that they're texting me in Chiang Mai, Thailand.
Yeah.
It's wild. I got like the global community.
That's cool.
I was working with. Yeah, it was really cool.
Mm.
So I did that for 6 months last year.
Mm.
And then this year, I knew I wanted to do something face to face, so I went to a mental health rehabilitation center here, inpatient, in right on the border of Chiang Mai and Lampung, and just finished that up a few weeks ago.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and that was really good. They really fully integrated me into the team. I was able to run group therapy, teach psychoed. I took a small caseload of clients one-on-one, doing like cognitive behavioral therapy, narrative exposure therapy, working through trauma. And then I also brought mindfulness into it. So I started a mindfulness-based interventions program with them.
Oh, wow.
And I added it all up. One day I did like 240 mindfulness-based interventions in 6 months.
That's great.
One-on-one mindfulness sessions,
awesome.
30 minutes at a time. Yeah, so I became pretty proficient at customizing a mindfulness experience for people. I also did, I started a recovery Dharma meeting there, which is takes Buddhist principles and practices and applies it to addiction. And then what else did I do?
Yeah, I wanted to sort of get into that. So what's the main points from your degrees, the sort of Western academic, what do you call it, education around the sort of mental health and helping out? So what's your main takeaways from those degrees that you have?
Yeah, so the main takeaways from the social work degree is really, it's about practicing in 3 different levels is the first thing I would say. Is like it's a micro level where it's like one-on-one working with people, or a meso level where I'm working with groups or I'm working with communities, and then there's a macro level where I'm doing like big policy type things for change. But to boil down a social work degree, it's about just helping people work through situations, basically. And the Western type takeaway is like it really there's a lot of like humanistic theory within it, which comes from Carl Rogers and person-centered therapy of having this unconditional positive regard for everybody, which at times can be difficult if you're especially working with people that have perhaps done some pretty heinous acts, or done some unsavory things, and maybe they're disheveled and they haven't showered in a few weeks and they're really just down, and it's like the dredges of society or such, often people, we may have a tendency to like, oh, you don't want to like deal with that type of person, but for us, like I'm like in there like compassion, empathy, unconditional positive regard for this person, and also trying to foster a lot of self-determination. That's another big social work thing, is allowing people to pursue what is important to them rather than what I think is important for them. You know what I mean? I may see it from my academic of like, we should really be working on this, but they're like, no, I want to work on this, and I'm like, you're the boss. I'm just a facilitator.
So I was wondering, in this, as I understand it, the psychologists, at least in Sweden, if you get a psychology degree, you kind of have to go through your own you have your own psychology or psychiatrist alongside, right?
Yeah.
Does that happen in your degree as well?
Yeah, so I had supervision.
Okay.
So if you have your own mental health challenges, like you should be working through those and have worked through some of that before you get into the field, perhaps. Because if not, you'll end up projecting a lot of that onto your clients. There's like a transfer.
It's hard to sort of accept and sort of hold space for other people if you're constantly judging them very harshly yourself.
For sure, yeah. And also, like, it's hard to hold space if you're activated. If you're in a state of fight, flight, or freeze, and you're being activated and triggered by what's going on. It's hard for you to hold that space.
And how was that sort of in the beginning, sort of holding space for other people? Were you sort of clear with your own stuff at that point, or?
That's a really a tricky balancing act there, because what you're talking about is the term is like self-disclosure. Like at any point should I be like, oh yeah, I can relate to what you're saying, because it's like it's like really so tricky to do it like that it's almost like I feel like I should just avoid it altogether until I get skilled enough to do it well enough. And in the beginning I was told like, hey, like never bring your shit into it, And then it becomes like, well, you could self-disclose if it's for the benefit of the client. But if it's just because you got some shit on your heart or mind that you want to get out, no, wrong answer. Like, it's not your therapy session, it's their therapy session. Get your own therapist, right? And I would say too, is like, it's having your own therapist as a therapist is really important, because like, even if you didn't have any mental health challenges before you went into the field, chances are you're probably going to have some on the way during it or on the way out, because it's a what's the word I'm looking for? There's a transference of trauma. It's you can't sit around and listen to these traumatic tales all day, every day, and not have some type vicarious trauma. That's the word I'm looking for. Can't have some type of vicarious trauma from it. And I found that to be true when I was doing drug and alcohol program advisor. I found it to be very true when I was doing sexual assault response coordinator, while I was working with rape victims. I mean, it's heartbreaking stuff.
I can imagine.
Yeah, so, but yeah, man.
It's all good. So, so now you're here in Thailand and Buddhism. Like one of my sort of newfound passions, or building passions lately, is the sort of Buddhism and the Vipassana and mindfulness. And what do you feel like? What are the intersections and positive and negative with Buddhism, or the sort of Eastern philosophies around mental health, and the Western sort of education around mental health? Have you reflected a lot around that?
Yeah, I mean, if you're taking the concept of mindfulness straight from like Buddhism and Eastern philosophies, and I mean, there's no doubt that there's been lots of random controlled trials on like applying mindfulness to like all sorts of things. Like the amount of studies have just skyrocketed in the last 5-6 years around that. So there's definitely a lot of evidence there for the efficacy of using mindfulness-based practices to help people work through all sorts of mental health challenges. And yeah, I think there's a lot there of just the philosophy around Buddhism of accepting and staying present and staying with things and just sitting with things. I think often we get in a lot of trouble when our thoughts create emotions, and those emotions create bodily sensations, and then we just can't sit with this. Like, I have to change it somehow or another, like maybe a drink or a smoke or another piece of cake or whatever it might be, And it's like when I have been able to cultivate this ability to just sit with things, like my life has been so much better. So I think, I'm really interested in that too. I'm interested in pulling from a lot of Buddhism and bringing it into mental health, and that's a lot of what I did with the mindfulness-based interventions. Was that, and we didn't do Vipassana so much as we just did like mindfulness meditation, mindfulness of breath, mindfulness of hearing, body scans, and then also work in like customization. I would customize meditations on the spot. Like, I'd ask people like, "How's it going? What's going on for you? What are you working on?" And they would give me like 3 big themes in their life, and then I would come up with a meditation right off the cuff. Like, I was blowing my own mind. I'm like, "How am I doing this? It's amazing."
So, is there anything you feel like the Western, mental health industry almost can sort of learn from the Eastern or the Buddhist sort of philosophies that they're
really good question.
Not yet sort of seeing in a way?
Yeah, perhaps. I mean, just I think applying a mindfulness aspect to things of like, I don't know, maybe not always trying to change things, but maybe being able to sit more with things and just let things be.
I've been doing a few Vipassanas now. I was back 2 weeks ago. I came back from a 2-week Vipassana, very intense, very clearing in a way.
Yeah.
And my teacher there say a little bit, so he's a Western sort of teacher. Been working with this in this Vipassana retreat for 5 years. And he say the Western psychology is you have a bunch of shells in a way, and your problem is a box. So you're just taking the box and moving it to another shelf in a way.
Yeah.
The Buddhist meditation is removing all the shelves and all the boxes altogether.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an interesting way to see it. Like just kind of whatever is coming up, you just kind of accept in a way.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like the CBT and the different kind of modules is changing the way you're thinking.
You're right.
It's not really getting to the core.
I would say, since you mentioned CBT, so CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is looking at the interplay between thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, right? And you're right, it's about changing, trying to change thoughts.
Yeah.
Whereas mindfulness-based cognitive behavioral therapy is more about recognizing, accepting, and realizing that thoughts will come and thoughts will go, and we don't have to entertain them, we don't have to play with them, you know, where traditional cognitive behavioral therapy is like, no, that thought is a cognitive distortion, it's a thinking error, and this is how you're going to change it. And I mean, I think we could both realize, and the listeners and viewers as well would realize, like, you know, how difficult it is to change our thoughts. Like we probably have little to no control over like what we're thinking. Especially that initial automatic thought. Like that just comes in like boom, and then, you know, it's kind of like, well, we can. So back to like mindfulness and meditation now, that I think it gives us ability when that automatic thought comes in, is we don't have to react. We can just like that was interesting. Watch it go on. You know? And if we do, you know, maybe we can respond wisely rather than react to things.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So something that's maybe we haven't talked a lot about this, but you have been around some war situations and stuff. What's your sort of thought around death in a way?
I'm trying to avoid it.
Yeah,
I try to avoid it, that's for sure. But my thoughts around death, as far as like, I mean, I can go back to like my combat experiences and my first combat experiences, and I remember going on deployments to Afghanistan. And being a young man, you know, and thinking I'm around death of like this could be it, and like having some acceptance of that. It was really difficult to accept that, but at the same time, I was like, well, I guess this is part of like what you signed up for, and but I try to avoid it. That's for sure.
Do you contemplate death anything in your sort of meditation practice?
I haven't done death meditations in a long time, but I know that from a Buddhist practice.
One thing I've learned that the novice monks when they sort of initiate here in Thailand, and I feel like that's why it's so peaceful around here a lot. Many of the teenage boys go and meditate on graveyards, middle of the night, in a group of other monks, but they sit a few hundred meters from each other. And they practice going into it like a few days before from the head monk, right? And then they go and sit and meditate. And I met a few of these sort of monks that do this or have done this, and they do it so. Increase humility, awareness of death, and patience, because they sit there and meditate and they hear stuff, and it's ghosts and spirits and stuff that they supposedly hear. I feel like that's a very in the West it's probably considered child abuse.
Perhaps.
But I feel it's sort of a ritual or an initiation ritual that we might have forgotten a little bit about in the West to become a little bit mature and realize the depth of life and our manhood in a way when we do that.
That's interesting.
I'm very fascinated about the topic in a way because in my last Vipassana I was a lot about that thinking and like panicking around that. This 2 weeks you end with 48 hours non-sleeping.
Oh wow.
Yeah, just meditate for 48 hours in your room, and there's a lot of shit coming up around death. So just curious about your thoughts around death.
Yeah, it's probably not very aligned with what you're talking about, other than the panicky part. I can remember. I mean, it's just thought come up to me is that I remember I like locked myself in a closet when I was like 10 years old, and like crying and screaming, thinking about death and thinking about for some reason or another was thinking about like the Civil War and like all the soldiers that died in the Civil War, and I'm like, and then everything that happened since then, they missed all that. I'm like, oh, everything I'm gonna miss when I die.
Yeah.
So, and now I'm like, yeah, when I think about death today, I do think about like just how like finite life is, and I think to myself, like, I don't want to. When I think about death today, it makes me think about not wasting time on frivolous things, which has been really good for like my wife and I, and she's on board with the same thing. She's actually the one that brought it to me, is like, we don't like arguments and all this petty bullshit. We're just like, look, life's too short for that. Yeah. Like, let's just get over it and move on, right? You know what I mean? Like, we don't want to waste another day talking about this or being upset about that or having a shitty attitude. So, it's like, I don't know. It's not in line with the Dharma or anything like that. That's for sure. But because there's some things I like really can dig with Buddhism and the Dharma, and then there's other things where I'm like, I don't know about that. We get into like reincarnation would be something. Like,
you don't believe in reincarnation?
I don't think so, man.
Yeah.
But then again, I have no evidence to the contrary. Maybe I'm going to come back as a bug for saying that. I don't know.
No, I think it's all good. Another thing. So go deep topics here.
Okay.
God.
Okay.
Did you grow up atheist?
I wouldn't say atheist, just ignorant. Like, no God, no religion, no nothing.
Okay.
I had no idea.
Yeah.
And again, I can remember kids like at the end of my block talking about like, well, I'm Catholic and I'm Protestant, I'm this and I'm that, and I was like, what are you, Chris? I'm like, I have no idea.
Yeah.
So I'll go home and ask my dad, like, what are we? What are we? He's like, we're capitalists.
Consumers.
We're consumers.
Yeah, exactly.
Capitalists.
Yeah.
But no, so I had no idea, none, and I just like, I never pursued it.
Yeah,
and I got much more spiritual when I got sober, and I got, especially getting into 12 steps and the fellowship, and it's a spiritual fellowship, and there's God in the steps, and you gotta accept some type of higher power into your life. So I took like God as an acronym. Like, first they told me it was good orderly direction, or it was a group of drunks. Like, so you use like the fellowship of AA.
Yeah. And
then the one I liked the most was, it's the gift of desperation. It's like when you're fresh out of answers and you have nothing else. Like, maybe then you hit your knees or however you want to do it and pray to something, some higher spiritual being. But yeah, I think I'm spiritual today. I would say I believe in the spiritual aspect of the world. Especially here in Thailand. I mean, you would be weirdo. You'd be the weirdo if you didn't believe in spirits here. You know? You're very much into definitely. The spiritual stuff here. So yeah.
That's great. And then now, so you've been here in Chiang Mai for the last 2 years, you said?
Almost 2 years to the day. A little less than 2 years, And it's been good. So my last assignment in the Navy, I ended up in Misawa, Japan, which is way up north on the northern tip of Honshu, the main island of Japan. Pretty wild, man. We moved there in December of 2018. And my wife always wanted to live in Japan. She probably didn't realize, and I didn't realize, that when the orders came in, like, well, you want to go to Misawa, Japan, that it was actually the snowiest place in the world, snowiest city in the world.
Wow.
Yeah, they get up to 10 meters of snow every year.
Oh, really?
And it just piles up to the rooftops. It's amazing. Wow. We didn't realize that. So, so the people that were cutting my orders sent me a text message like 2 o'clock in the morning, and it just said Japan ? And I said, like, hold on. I texted my wife, hey, do you want to go to Japan? And then like 15 minutes later, she's like, yeah, sure. So I texted back, yeah, we'll take it. Like 3 months later, we got orders. We're going to Japan from California. So we're living in Southern California. We go from Southern California to the snowiest city in the world. We go from like perfect weather every single day. Till we get off the plane in Japan, it's literally snowing sideways.
Wow.
There's already snow like this high, and I'm just like, oh my God. My wife's looking at me like, what have you done? But anyway, we really loved it by the time we left. So, but at the end of my career, I was in Japan, And then I went from Japan back to the States to get out of the military because it's just, I could have done it in Japan, but it would have been a pain in the ass and it probably wouldn't have went very well. So I went all the way back to the States with my family, got out of the military right outside of Seattle, Washington on the West Coast. Got my truck back. I had a truck there that was in storage for like 3 years. The military was storing it. They shipped it up to Seattle for me. So I had my old truck back, threw my whole family in the truck, got out of the military, drove from Seattle all the way down the coast to San Diego.
Oh, nice.
Got a tattoo for my buddy, and then drove all the way across the United States, which sounded like a really good idea, like this really great adventure.
Yeah.
It was okay, but dude, we did it with like a 6-month-old. Yeah, my daughter was just a baby.
That is an awesome adventure, though. Like,
yeah, it was cool.
Yeah.
Because my daughter, she was going through homeschooling curriculum at the time. Acellus, she did Acellus for like a year. She did like 2 years worth of Acellus curriculum, all online, and it was kind of cool that we were studying in the United States, and then she was actually like in the places as we were driving across that she was studying. So that was pretty cool. But yeah, we ended up going across the United States, lived in Washington, D.C. for like a week visiting, and then went up to my hometown of Albany, New York, and stayed there for like 6 weeks. Sold my truck at the end of that to CarMax. It was awesome. I got such a great price on it
really?
during the pandemic. Oh, dude, I got a really good deal.
That's awesome.
I was so happy. I love that truck though, but anyway, I was really happy with that. And then we ended up coming, to Thailand at the tail end of like the surge of the pandemic. Had to do the Thai pass thing, had to do the quarantine thing. It was a big pain in the butt. And then all of our stuff was in Japan still, and we had to figure out how to get our stuff brought to the port in Bangkok through customs, and then put on a truck and driven from Bangkok all the way up to Chiang Mai.
And your wife is from Chiang Mai, or?
She's from Chiang Rai, actually.
Chiang Rai, okay.
Yeah.
So
just outside of Chiang Rai, Padet.
So Chiang Mai was the sort of plan all along, or?
Yeah, well, we were looking at Chiang Rai initially, but there's just not enough international schools there, so there's only 2 really to choose from, and so if you don't like either one of those, then you're kind of screwed. So then I was like, as much as I wanted the slow life, like Chiang Rai's a little too slow, so I like Chiang Mai. There's like obviously so much to do here, so many great cafes and coffee shops and restaurants, and there's probably 20 international schools. And I got Doi Sutet that I can see right outside my window here. So this was the obvious choice.
Good life here. Definitely such a beautiful life here.
Yeah, I love it.
All right, so we cannot finish this podcast before we talk about running.
Okay.
You obviously been doing sort of athletic things most of your life through the military. You said the Navy test was not a problem, so your mental capacity seems to be quite strong. And I know you did a 100-mile race at one point.
Yeah, well, actually, I was a self-supported 100-mile run.
Yeah.
Me and my buddy Corey, in Japan.
So tell us a little bit about your running career and how it's been developing.
Yeah, so my running, really long distance running, like marathons and beyond, started in 2015, and it was a way for me to basically save my ass because I was on deployment. I was literally locked on this little island off the coast of California called San Clemente Island. That was my deployment site. And everybody on the island, like in their off time, when they worked hard, they played hard. And by played hard, I mean they drank a lot. And they drank a lot and they fished. And I was like, man, I obviously never want to drink again. As I made that promise 8 years prior to this, I was like, I said I was never going to drink again. I'm not drinking. And I'm like, but I got to find something to do with myself. So I ended up ordering a pair of running shoes, some nutrition, a water bottle. I should back up and say, I saw a film on YouTube called Western Time. I've never seen it, by Billy Yang. It's about Sally McRae.
Billy Yang, I know,
yeah. He's awesome.
Western States and all that.
Yeah.
I love
and her bid to do Western States, right? It's an amazing film. So I saw that and I was like, man, and as crazy as it sounds, like I saw all that suffering that she was going through, and I was like, I want to know what that's like. I want to see if I can push through those dark spots too. So I ended up saying, hey, I try to be smart. I knew myself, or I knew like sometimes I had a tendency to overdo it. I have a problem with portions. So So I was like, I'm just gonna train for a marathon.
Mm.
So I got the shoes in, I got the bottle, I got the nutrition, and I trained for a marathon. I trained my ass off, dude. I was like running all the time. And I ended up taking leave from deployment. I went up to San Francisco and I ran my first trail marathon called the Golden Gate Marathon. And I got 4th. I was like,
oh wow.
Yeah, I crushed it.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I crushed it. First race, I'm like, oh shit. I'm like, I crushed it.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so I'm like, maybe there's something to this. Maybe I'm good at this.
Yeah.
So that like kind of sparked me to go like, and at the finish line, as hurting as I was like, I want to go farther. So I like immediately signed up for a 50K, and then got off deployment, did the 50K. I did the same race, Sean O'Brien, that's actually in the film Western Time.
Oh, yeah.
So I did the Sean O'Brien 50K. And the craziest thing is, Billy Yang, I met him on the course.
Oh,
I'm
really?
running along, and I see this dude, and I'm like, that looks like Billy Yang. He's got this camera set up, and I was like, stop. I was like, are you Billy Yang? And he's like, yeah. And he was kind of like, I'm kind of busy here.
He was here a few months ago, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, maybe 6. Yeah, so maybe last year. Like,
Okay, yeah. I saw him.
Yeah,
he did UTMB.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, so anyway, I met Billy Yang, and I was like, dude, and I told him, I was like, your film, Western Time, is the reason I'm out here. Like, that inspired me to get into ultra running. This is my first ultra. And then he was so cool. He was like, oh my God, it's your first ultra? So he took out his camera, and he's like, keep running. And he's like taking pictures of me, and then he emailed me the pictures.
Really?
Yeah.
Cool, wow, so you're buddies now?
Yeah, we're basically best friends.
Awesome, that's amazing.
Yeah, but anyway, so I went from crawl, walk, run with it, marathon, 50K, then a 50 miler, then a 100K, and then I was gonna do a 100 miler, but the pandemic hit, and pretty much every race got shut down. So there was no races to be had.
Yeah.
I was also doing a lot of running and fundraising around recovery from substance use disorders. So I was doing fundraising for Phoenix Multisport, which is box style kind of CrossFit gyms all around the United States, and they're free to people that are in recovery. You only need 48 hours of continuous sobriety, and you can go, and they got yoga, mountain biking, rock climbing, running, everything. Yeah, it's really cool. So I did some fundraising for them. I also did fundraising for a nonprofit called Addict to Athlete, founded by Blue and Marissa Robinson in Utah. They take athletics and apply it to recovery from substance use disorder. And I did a cool run with them. I ran for 12 hours on my 12th year of sobriety, starting at midnight, and I ran all the way until noon the next day.
That's awesome.
On this like really short, like it was like a 4-kilometer mountain trail, just around and around this pond in Japan. And when I got bored of going this way, I stopped and went the other way.
Okay.
But as luck would have it, it was March 31st when I did it, and the snow pretty much was done by that time, but a snowstorm came in, so I ran for 12 hours in a snowstorm. And the snow definitely affected my pace. I only did 42 miles, but it was still pretty good, and I was so cold. But anyway, that was cool. So back to the 100-miler thing, I did that, again, more fundraising for Addict to Athlete. And I was actually coming off an injury. I had a herniation in my spine, a 9-millimeter bulging disc, and I had spinal surgery, and then 7 months later I did that 100-mile run. Wow. Yeah. And I did it as a tribute to a guy named David Clark. So David Clark was a 300-pound addict, fast food junkie, just a mess. He got into ultra running, turned into this ultra running beast. Lost like a whole person. He lost I'm trying to put it in kilograms. He lost like 75 kilograms or something. And he did all sorts of these crazy 100-mile runs and all sorts of great runs, and he was really inspirational. And he ended up passing away. He passed away during complications in spinal surgery. Almost the same spinal surgery that I had got, but one vertebrae up. And I remember I was doing a podcast, actually. I was a guest on a podcast the morning I found out about David Clark passing away. And as I was doing the podcast, it kind of like occurred to me, like, what I felt like I had to do in a way to honor this guy David Clark, and maybe raise some money. Was like, I'm gonna do a 100-mile run. So
as you do.
Yeah, as you do, as one does.
As I've tried, but didn't succeed. So.
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
And respect for you for trying, because dude, that shit is no joke.
No.
It was the most painful thing I ever did in my life.
I can imagine.
Yeah, it was really bad.
Speaking about sort of a ritual of initiations.
Yeah.
That's definitely something that would change you.
Yeah, it did, man. And but I was gonna do it across Japan, and then the pandemic had a big surge in Hirosaki, the city of Hirosaki prefecture. So being in the Navy at the time, like they limited me where I could go, where I couldn't go based on COVID threat levels. So they were like, hey, you can't go into Hirosaki. So, damn it. So I ended up going from the coast of Japan, Misawa, all the way up to this peak by Lake Tawada, and it just happened to be perfectly 50 miles. So then I ran all the way up there with my buddy Corey, and then ran all the way back. And my lovely wife, God bless her, dude, she drove the van. We had a van at the time, the whole entire time. It was like my rolling aid station with my daughter, and she was pregnant with my other daughter at the time.
Wow.
She's a beast.
She's a trooper. Yeah.
She's a total trooper.
Yeah.
And we did it in 31 hours. And the last like 25 miles of it were
31 hours is quite good pace, actually.
Yeah, well, it's also a lot of it's on the road, so it wasn't. It wasn't in the mountains and trails.
Yeah,
it was road stuff. Yeah. And we were using like kind of like family marts for our aid stations. Like we were running a family mart to family mart.
How's your body feeling after? Knees and hips and everything?
During was way worse.
Oh, really?
Than after. Like after, I actually, during was really bad, and at the very end was really, really bad. At the very end, I got in the van, my wife drove me like the 10 miles back to our house, and then we were there, and she puts it in park and opens the door, and she's like, all right, we're home, and I try to get up, dude, nothing.
Yeah.
My legs wouldn't work.
Really?
I was like nothing. I'm like telling my muscles, let's go, and they're like, done, we're done.
Yeah.
So my neighbor's kid broke her ankle, and I was like, hey, go talk to Ed and see if he's got those crutches still. I got crutches, dude. I crutched out of the vehicle, fell into the house, fell on the couch, and was done, dude. I couldn't get up for hours. My wife like cut a hole in a jug for me to bring it over so I could pee. Like I couldn't even get up off the couch to use the bathroom. It was so bad.
Funny.
So bad. But anyway, like it was like that for about 3 days. I literally laid in bed. It was a really good 3 days. I laid in bed watching Netflix and got weighted on hand and foot. It was actually really good. Yeah. On day 3, I got up and got on my bicycle and I rode like 50 kilometers around this lake and started to feel good again, and was back to running like that following weekend, just real slow. And I felt good about that. My buddy Corey, if he's ever watching this, I'm sure he will. That dude's a real stud. He went and ran a half marathon the following weekend after the 100-miler and set like his PR on the half marathon. I was like, what?
That's crazy.
Yeah, amazing. Amazing.
That's crazy. So now here in Chiang Mai we have a beautiful little community. I'm currently sort of on a break, but you keep on running, I guess. What's your sort of situation right now? Any running goals? Any races coming up?
Yeah, so next weekend is UTMB, Doi Intanon World Majors. So I'm doing that. And I feel good. 50K. 50K.
Any ambitions?
Yeah, of course.
Winning?
Yeah, of course. I plan to win. No, not overall, but I think I can place top 3 in my age group, which I'm 49. So I think I might be able to. We'll see.
Feeling good shape?
I feel pretty good. I actually broke my ankle last year training for it.
Oh, wow.
So I didn't break bone. I shouldn't say I broke it, but I tore the ligament off the bone. Oh, wow. And that was coming down last big training run, 3 weeks out from the race, coming down last man standing, and my ankle went, and it was like a loud snap and so much pain that I feel like I was gonna pass out. That was really bad. So I've been coming back from that all this year, but all the races I've entered, except for maybe 2 out of like I think I've done like 9 races this year. I placed top 10, some top 5s.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you're a fucking a strong runner. Like when we run with you, the tank is one of your nicknames. Like just power through everything. It doesn't matter what's in the way. Like it's like the tank.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Getting back a little bit to the mindfulness stuff.
Yeah.
Have mindfulness helped you in the running stuff? Anything?
Yeah, for sure.
I feel way more observant of my stuff, my willingness to quit and stuff like that with the mindfulness.
Yeah, for sure. I think mindfulness definitely helps, and applying it and being able to, as I talked about before, being able to sit with things.
Yeah.
Just sit with discomfort and
yeah.
not have to change it and realize that it will change.
Yeah.
Like there's impermanence in all of it.
Yeah.
I mean, back to that 100-mile run. I did that 100-mile run. I remember at mile 35, I got a pain in my ankle, and I remember I was like, oh my God, it felt like I had like a hornet or something. I stopped, I pulled my sock down, and I was kind of hoping to see a hornet or something, but there was no hornet. So I was like, oh shit,
okay,
this is bad. So then, where does the mind go at mile 35? The mind goes to mile 95. And I think, like, if my ankle hurts this bad right now, what's it gonna feel like in another 60 miles?
Yes.
And I start like amping myself up, and then I go, hold on, Chris, hold on. I have to bring it back. Let's take a breath in. Breath back out, and let's bring it back to right here, right now. You can keep going on this ankle, and it could change. As much as it doesn't make any sense, like it may feel better. And it did. Until about mile 75. Then I felt it wasn't, the ankle was the least of my
mindfulness
worries.
can only take it so far.
And the ankle became like the least of my concerns at mile 75.
Oh, really?
Oh, dude. At mile 75 is when I remember I pulled off my shoe. I'll never forget, I was on the side of the road, I pulled off my shoe, and I was like, I think I got a rock in my shoe. And Corey's like in there, looks, he's like, ain't no rock, bro. And then he like looks, and I like felt my sock. I was like, oh, dude, my sock feels like wet. Like, this isn't good. And then I peeled off my sock, and dude, I had a blister like this big, around the bottom of my foot. And it had split open, and it was like leaking. It was bad. But anyway. So back to the question. Mindfulness definitely helps me with running, and I like trying to apply that mindfulness and present moment reality, this present moment awareness when I'm out running, especially on the trails. It can be a really magical thing. Like, as you know, getting out there super early in the morning, getting out into places that are rarely accessed by people because we have this physical ability to get there quickly and get down quickly, and then like I to the point I used to do meditations before I would run, and I called it the cool down before the warm up. So I would cool everything down and like chill out and try to be as mindful as I can, and then open my eyes from the meditation and try to take that off the cushion for as long as I could into the run. And I've also noticed too, I don't know, maybe you've noticed this as well, is like just how powerful the mind is when I'm running. And like whenever I trip and fall, for the most part, I'm usually thinking about some shitty things, like I'm questioning abilities, or I'm having self-doubts, or whatever it might be, just some stupid argument in my head, and then next thing you know, I like hit a root and I'm on the ground. I'm like, geez, where did that come from?
It's so funny because last year I had a sort of little bit of a life breakdown with like I lost credit cards and I lost banking ID from Sweden, right?
Oh, wow.
And I talked, like everything happened within a few days. It's like super weird. And I talked to a monk about this, and he said, when you not have mindfulness, these things will happen. So it just, it's very, I didn't see it at that point, but after some more meditation, like I can relate the distractions, like when you're not in the aware of the present moment. Very much in the past or the future. And
just that attitude too, like how we go into things. Like I know, like when I've had races and I'm like, I need to do good. I need to try harder. Don't let that person pass you. And then I'll like have the worst race and I'll just blow up and I'll end up like laying on the side of the trail throwing up or whatever. So, but the opposite is true. So I go into a race and I'm like, like my wife preaches, like, just go have fun. I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm not here to have fun. But
Crush it.
I'm gonna crush it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
But when I'm able to be like, hey, today I'm just gonna have fun. I'm gonna laugh. I'm gonna hoop. I'm gonna holler. I'm gonna take selfies. I'm gonna talk to people. Whatever it might be.
Yeah.
I'll have like the best race, and I'll
yeah.
get like really good results.
Yeah.
Like just trying to stay in this positive mental attitude and
Yeah,
just
yeah.
be happy.
Definitely.
Like it's just productive because the body relaxes and you know and blood flow goes where it needs to,
definitely.
rather than in this fight or flight type of thing.
Yeah, like there's this Chinese proverb that says tension is who you think you should be, relaxation is who you are.
Wow. I like that.
Which is very profound, I feel. I just discovered like a few weeks ago. I started noticing myself with as soon as I think too much, at least, my body tenses up and all my sort of well-being and performance and everything just goes out the window.
Yeah, it's being a hyper aroused state.
Yeah, it's something.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and then like you're keen on too is like socialization. Like that's like falls off too. Like you don't want to talk to people.
No.
You're like when I'm like just leave me alone. I'm going into my cave to to ride this thing out.
Definitely.
You know? Yeah, for sure.
Interesting. Yeah, there's this running monks in Japan as well.
Yeah.
That sounds super brutal though. If you don't manage, I don't know exactly what it is, but
they have to kill themselves.
Yeah, in the end, like if they can't finish.
The screening process is pretty good.
Sounds
because
brutal.
I don't think anyone's had to do it yet.
No, it's brutal.
Yeah, no, I saw that there's a film called 3100 that talks about the running monks, and they're right outside of Kyoto.
They run. How is it for 7 days? There's something about around 7.
Dude, I don't know. They
and
run
if they
a lot.
don't do it, they
And
have to kill themselves.
And it's over the course of like a pretty substantial amount of time too. Like it's like a year or
and
something.
it's nighttime. They have to do it.
Yeah. It's I don't know. I
It's
don't know all the details of it. I just
extreme.
know that it's extreme. Yeah, and I'm
extreme
fascinated by it, but I don't.
Yeah.
Don't foresee myself classing up anytime soon for that.
All right, almost an hour in. Just the last few questions here. So, describe a little bit more exactly what are you doing now? Mindfulness coaching. So, what are you doing more exactly?
Well,
with your patients.
Right now, I'm not doing much. I'm taking a little break, but what I do, I work for a company in the States called My Steady Mind, so cognitive fitness coach. So I coach people through a 9-module course, trying to increase their amount of mental fitness. And it basically, what it is trying to apply mindfulness, breath practices, things of that nature, trying to increase people's emotional intelligence, and trying to just basically help people set themselves up for success in their professional and maybe more importantly their personal lives.
Yeah.
So I do that. I do coaching through that. I also work for a nonprofit called Consequence of Habit, and I'm on their board of directors there. I also do some their social media marketing. What else am I doing? But I'm also looking to build a cognitive fitness coaching business for myself, and I'm a podcaster just like you. I put out about 20 episodes this season.
Great.
And looking forward to next season with Cognitive Fitness Coach Podcast. And then yeah, man. I mean, I'm busy, but at the same time, I'm like trying not to get too busy. Trying to just chill out. Be in the moment. Be with my kids too. You know, like we're talking about, like life is finite, and I want to be around for my kids growing up. So until my 2-year-old is probably ready to go to school, like I'm gonna be chilling out here around the house as much as possible.
Awesome.
Yeah, but I mean, my goals in the future is just to work with people as much as possible, and just help people work through whatever challenges that they're experiencing.
That's awesome. So just the last little curveball.
Yeah.
With all your life experience, if you can just give the golden nugget of your wisdom so far in life, what would you advise?
I would say take risk.
Take risk.
Yeah, take risk.
Yeah. Do
the scary thing. Do the thing that frightens you.
Yeah.
Lean into that. Because it's been my experience. I mean, it's not like I'm a super old timer, but I'm pushing 50 years old, and looking back over the course of my life, I've come to realize like that all the best things that I have in life come from a time where I took a risk and I fucking pushed off from shore and went out into that big scary ocean of life and pursued things that people may have said like you're crazy for fucking pursuing.
Crazy,
you know? Join the Navy, that was scary. Oh, you're like, wait a second, you're meeting a girl in person that you met on MySpace online and you're getting married? That's crazy. Well, 16 years later, we're still, around.
That's great.
And you're moving to Thailand?
Yeah.
That's crazy. Well, 2 years later, here we are in this beautiful house in this beautiful city and having the time of our lives. So yeah, I'd say take risk.
Take risk.
Life's short.
Yeah.
Pursue what you're passionate about.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And where can they reach you if they want to reach out, connect, and if they want to get some coaching, perhaps?
Yeah, if you want to connect with me, probably the best place to connect personally is on LinkedIn. I'm Chris Norris on LinkedIn. I should pop up as one of the more popular Chris Norrises on LinkedIn. Also, if you find me on Instagram, it's Cognitive Fitness Coach on Instagram, and those are two of the best places.
Okay. And your podcast?
Cognitive Fitness Coach is also the name of the podcast.
On Spotify or YouTube or?
Yeah, it's all over Spotify. It's on
iTunes.
Not Google, Apple, iTunes. Yeah, it's on Buzzsprout. Yep. Cognitive Fitness Coach is the name of the podcast, and soon it'll be cognitiveFitnessCoach.com will be a website.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Chris.
Awesome.
Good conversation.
Yeah, good talking to you.